When I was younger, and my older sister Grace would have friends over, I would always ask if I could hang out with her, and she would always say no, unless they were playing one specific game. In this game, my mom would come up with an elaborate murder mystery story. She'd assign us each an individual role, and then we'd have to figure out who did it and how the story ends. The game would go on for hours, and I was always a little frustrated when we got started if I wasn't assigned to be the murderer or a direct accomplice, because that meant I'd have to wait even longer to find out the exciting stuff. Things came up in the flow of the game that were unexpected as we embraced our roles probably a little more fully than my mom had intended. We added parts of our personalities to the characters we were assigned. We focused on small details that others might have overlooked, and we almost always missed things that became blatantly obvious by the end. Elementary school me loved this game because it gave me a chance to hang out with the big girls. Now, recent college graduate me loves the game because it is essentially a scaled-down version of real life. Well, not exactly, and to be very clear, I have not taken up the identity of neither murderer nor detective, but I have been playing a similar game ever since. In the last year, I experienced a range of loss I never could have imagined. Some of those losses were marked by distinct moments. On September 1st, I tore my ACL and meniscus, changing my college soccer career in an instant. On March 1st, a close friend of mine died by suicide, really changing everything for me. Other losses came over time. Some of my friendships changed as people came and went slowly. My priorities shifted, and goals I once held firmly to slowly faded into the background. Now, you're probably thinking, okay, but what does that have to do with the incredibly amazing and fun-sounding murder mystery game you just described? Which is a valid thought, but bear with me for a second. Each of the losses I just mentioned were like stories told at the start of my mother's game. There was confusion, there were key players, there were gaping holes, and a subtle irritation once again that I wanted to just know what was going to happen next, or at the very least, fast forward to the fun parts. I tore my ACL in September, like I mentioned. Being a competitive soccer player, this is really the worst thing you can imagine. Unfortunately, it is a very distinct injury. Excuse me for being a little graphic for a second, but the sound, the way the person hits the ground, the way they scream and roll around and cry is all too familiar, especially to women soccer players. I'd seen it a million times, but I honestly never thought it could happen to me, and then it did. And when I did it, I knew exactly what I had just done, and I really couldn't believe it. I've been playing soccer since I was a little girl, and I've never been hurt before, and I honestly didn't know if I was cut out for 9 months of rehab. I'll spare you some of the boring details, but fast forward 8 days from the injury, I had just had surgery. I was in bed in a hotel with my mom, probably a little high from all the pain medication, with my leg wrapped up tight from hip to ankle. I wasn't really paying attention to the TV, and then all of a sudden I realized that the local news station playing was talking about me. My Virginia soccer career, my personality, my presence as a teammate. There's something really weird about hearing people on the news talk about you in the past tense, and I'm not sure what it was about that specific moment that did it for me, but I realized this is real life, and I'm not going to play this season. I'm going to be on crutches for at least 6 weeks due to my meniscal tear, and things are going to be really difficult going forward. Now again, I'll spare you all the boring details, but things were really quite difficult for me. I had a ton of lifestyle changes I had to adjust to. Most notably, I couldn't drive for almost 7 weeks, which for me is really not a good thing. So my friends chauffeured me around basically everywhere, and my dad actually came to UVA many a time to carry my books into every lecture hall, carry my crutches, or both for about a month. So I can't thank him enough for that because I wouldn't have been able to do much without him. But the emotional experience was and continues to be the hardest part for me. Physical challenges aside, I do have a long road ahead of me, and there are still physical challenges that I'm facing, but I will continue to struggle with the emotional part of it. There are so many changes I've had to go through in the last year, and I can't even articulate those to you now. But I learned in those challenges that it's important to tell people that you're experiencing such challenges. Talk through the confusion, ask for help, seek advice when you need it. There's no shame in that. Like in the game, you need others to collaborate, you need others to help you in order to figure out what's going on. As I mentioned at the beginning, I also lost a friend a few months ago. There is no words I can use to explain that level of sadness, and I don't wish it upon anybody. Again, in a similar vein, like having an injury, the only way to cope and to make sense of the world without her in it is to talk about it, to talk to people who loved her as much as I did, to share memories and laugh and share stories, because that's the only thing we have left, unfortunately. In the same vein, sadly, the student-athlete community in the last year or so has experienced too much of this sadness. So many incredible young people have been struggling in the battle against mental health, and we've lost too many of them. In the wake of this, however, I've seen some of my peers rally together and share super important and necessary conversations about mental health. In my own community at Virginia, 2 of my teammates approached me about a year ago about starting something really special. Together, the three of us really decided that it's so important to share the parts of our journey that often go unnoticed. We built a platform called Uncut at UVA. Uncut is an online storytelling platform for student athletes to truly come as they are. We publish stories about mental health, about personal passions that persist outside of the field, the court, or the track, and we also share things that are just lighthearted and fun because sometimes you don't get to see all of those. In rehab, In losing one of my closest friends and in working on a project such as this, I've been reminded once again of how important it is to tell stories, to share the highs and the lows of our journey, and to collaborate. As you can probably tell, I've gone through quite a bit this year, and some of it's been pretty hard, but I can collectively summarize it as such. What you're going through is a lot. It's really hard, it sucks, and yes, you might have been able to learn these lessons without the heartbreak, but they're important nonetheless. Take time to share those parts of your journey, the good, the bad, and the ugly. People won't judge you for it. It'll help you, and it might help them too. So please, don't be ashamed to reach out. You need it. Like in the game, like in rehab, and like in life, the joy is in the journey. It's in the collaboration. It's in the small moments. And like in my mother's game, you can't win it alone. You can't fast forward, and such is true for life. Thank you.